You're live. Okay. All right. I don't know who is on it. I think it's Daniel. If it is Daniel, why don't you say hello to him and tell him what you wanted to say? I think Daniel is on the line. I think. I'm not too sure.
Are you there?
There are people are joining. There are others. Okay, if you want to please introduce yourself, go ahead, make an introduction. I appreciate that. And also tell us where you are calling from. Okay, there is Nathan Hoffman. He's from Los Angeles. Hello, Nathan. Okay, let them introduce themselves at their pace. Let's get started. We don't have too much time. It's a long seminar. Okay, go ahead. All right, I'm going to make the first introduction. I'm going to introduce you to Dr. Jonathan Tuck. Dr. Jonathan Tuck, he likes to be called as John Tuck, and he really is a remarkable individual, and I have a great pleasure to introduce him to you. And he is all the way from Scotland joining us, and he has a doctorate in energy sciences, and he's a relentless learner, and he is well versed in conscious energy, conscious systems, and with over 2 decades of experience as an executive coach, he has mentored leaders across industries, helping them unlock their highest potential. And he is a serial entrepreneur himself. He has founded Zap & Company. It's an innovative energy storage company launched in 2014. Now, beyond the boardroom, John is a trusted advisor and non-executive director to several forward-thinking companies. And his curiosity and commitment to deeper understanding have also led him to study biogeometry, and he has emerged as a Reiki master, teacher, and healer, and all sorts of things along that line. His unique interdisciplinary approach culminates in his book he has written, and the book is called The Theory of Everything. Oh, is it A Theory of Everything? This is one or the other, A Theory of Everything. And it is a compelling synthesis of science, energy, and consciousness. Now, I need to tell you, see, there are 2 types of knowledge, okay? The kind we gain to pass exams, and the kind we pursue out of a deep, authentic passion. See, the first kind of learning is pretty much, you are learning knowledge. And the second kind of a knowledge is you are learning by way of experience. In other words, by way of realizations. It's a much deeper learning. Okay, and this kind of learning stays with you forever, and it transforms everything about you. Now, John embodies the second kind of knowing. I don't even describe it as knowledge. I call this knowing because it really is the root of all wisdom. And his wisdom is actually lived, not merely learned. And that authenticity speaks through everything he shares. Oh God, let me answer this. Hello, John.
Hi, Anthony, what's happening?
I don't know. The seminar is going forward. Come back and join again. We sign back in again. Okay?
Right, okay, thanks.
All right. Sorry about that. And that's one of the technology glitches. When he is running from Scotland and I'm here in Florida. So some technical glitches happening here and there. And please forgive us for that. We don't want to blame the technology, but nonetheless, that's what happened. Okay. So here we are, and we are going to welcome Dr. Jonathan Tuck. It is an honor to welcome here all the way from Scotland. Please join me in listening intently with open minds and hearts. Appreciate that. Thank you so much.
So over to me then, Anthony.
Yeah.
Right, okay, thank you. So I'm going to kick off by briefly introducing the concept of what we describe as external intelligence and internal intelligence. And I'm going to talk a bit about how they differ and what can be achieved when the two are combined. Now, I'll just give a short introduction on this concept, as Anthony will talk about them in greater detail a little later on. If you have any questions for either of us, please drop them in the chat box, because we've allocated a little time to answer your questions at the end of our respective sessions. So I'm just going to share my screen now. Bear with me a second. There we go. So, what we call external intelligence is what we refer to as the thought process that we use in our lives every day in order to make things happen, like ensuring that we have an income and can do everything that goes with the jobs that we perform, like ensuring that our families are well and housed and protected, and making sure that the bills are paid on time and that we can take vacations when we need them. External intelligence is very much system driven, and it requires input from the 3D world in order to come into fruition or to manifest. So, for example, in order for many people to perform their work, they require an input from their boss, who in many cases equally require an input from their bosses, and so on. Or if you're planning a vacation, then you may have an idea of where you'd like to travel to, but you rely on travel agents and airports and transportation and an itinerary in order to manifest that excursion. So what we refer to as internal intelligence is more easily described as being akin to intuition or gut feeling, but more powerfully associated with multidimensional thinking, where a person has let go of all conscious thoughts and has allowed the magic to happen. So, other than the consideration of the challenge or problem in question, internal intelligence needs no external input, just the desire to create and innovate, as they say, outside of the box. I remember a quote that says, "A problem cannot be solved by the same way of thinking that it created it." It's tuning into your own internal wisdom, for example, alluded to in the book Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon Hill. What transpires is that once a person begins to develop their ability to access and trust their internal intelligence, then they can more easily evolve their external intelligence in conjunction with their internal wisdom to manifest amazing things into their reality. So there are many ways of accessing your internal intelligence, and I'm going to be talking a bit about fundamental challenges that we face and also why the knowledge surrounding solutions is not well understood, particularly in the West. Anthony's going to go into more detail later, so I won't dwell on this slide for now. We'll be sending out a copy of the slides so you can have a look back at them later if you need. So, when I was in my early teens, I noticed that no matter how much I convinced myself in what I subsequently learned to observe as my conscious mind, that I wanted to behave in a different and more positive way and in line with how I saw myself, again in my conscious mind, it seemed that I would repeatedly display that bad behavior. It seemed that I just couldn't learn from my mistakes, and I'd just repeatedly behave exactly as I didn't want to. Now, the more I observed others, the more I realized that I wasn't alone, and that it would appear that many of my friends and family also saw themselves and talked about themselves as people that just didn't add up to the way they actually behaved. Now, I figured that if I could study them enough to begin to understand why it was they experienced this anomaly, then I could apply what I learned to myself, and I could begin to change myself and my behavior in a way that I could be proud of. This early study became fundamental to the research and experimentation that I performed on myself, and everything that I've subsequently learnt and practiced, and is equally fundamental to the work that I do with my clients now, whether from a business perspective or for personal life coaching. To put it into context, one of the things that I was ultimately able to do was to evolve my internal intelligence in conjunction with my external intelligence. And one good example of this is the personal development book that I started to write in 2017, where I'm sure that many of the most important conclusions came exactly from accessing my internal intelligence. So, how is this internal intelligence described by science? Well, in a nutshell, and from a conventional sense, it's basically not. It's seemingly swept under the carpet and ignored. External intelligence is easily modelled and measured, and if necessary, using Newtonian physics, but only on one plane of existence. However, if you study esoteric and mystical wisdom, you'll learn that for millennia people have known that there are more planes of existence. And only when you consider them all together holistically, then do you get an absolute understanding of how everything in the universe really works and what shapes our reality. This is one of the things that Auntie and I are doing, is bringing this knowledge to you. So if you do some research surrounding the planes of existence, also referred to as dimensions as Anthony describes them, you'll find a plethora of otherwise confusing information, which suggests that there could be up to a dozen of different planes, or even dozens of different planes. However, when you look more closely at the information presented, what you find is that what many of them are referring to are subdivisions of the primary planes, which are the physical, vital, the emotional or astral, the mental and spiritual planes. And it's usually the spiritual planes that are divided the most. So I've based my analysis here on the works of Dr. Ibrahim Karim of the Vesica Institute of Biogeometry. So one of the reasons for the confusion and lack of unity is that, as I said, this is esoteric knowledge and wisdom that has been understood and practiced by the few for millennia, and for whatever reason withheld from the masses. which is beginning to surface and percolate into our awareness at this time. Newtonian physics and classical chemistry and biology only consider anything from the perspective of the physical plane alone, which has been okay for measurement of physical phenomena and developing physical solutions to three-dimensional challenges, has enabled us to make the tremendous advances that we've made. Now, quantum physics begins to bridge the gap by acknowledging that the consciousness of the observer affects the outcome of the experiment, for example. However, the most insightful wisdoms do not usually come from modern science, but from studying ancient practices and with connection to your inner intelligence, something that Anthony, as a mystic, has decades of experience with. Back in the 20th century, or the early 20th century even, the great Nikola Tesla is quoted to have said, "The day science begins to study non-physical phenomena, it will make more progress than it made in all the previous centuries of its existence." So why work with me? My work encompasses 35 years of observation, research and development of primarily mind techniques, which begin to unlock the significant power of your incredible human mind. From its foundations, I'll begin to address and correct your interpretation of fear and anxieties and help you to change your thoughts by removing unnecessary and redundant negative associations with past memory trauma, leaving you with clarity of thought, better and faster decision making, removal of unnecessary anger and better sleeping in the absence of an overactive mind at night. With practice and guidance, it will ultimately allow you to synchronously align with your inner wisdom or internal intelligence and will assist to create your reality of your desires. So I'll have a look to see if anyone has posted any questions at this stage, but bear in mind that, as I said, Anthony will explain or expand upon much of what I've discussed in further detail next, particularly surrounding internal, external intelligence and the quantum connection, and much, much more.
If you have any questions, feel free to ask, please. There it is. This is from Nathan Hoffman. And he's asking, Dr. Tuck, would it be fair to say that external intelligence is temporal, mundane intelligence required to exist in a Newtonian cause and effect, holographic physical universe, whereas internal intelligence is the timeless divine intelligence derived from an external, ineffable supreme consciousness?
Well, I think there's a resounding yes to all of that. I think that's a very, very wise statement. Thank you, Nathan. Yes, thank you for sharing that. In fact, I might steal it for my work. It was so good.
Yeah.
Okay.
Anyone have any questions? Feel free to ask. And please feel free to list your questions, especially when I talk, you will have lots of questions. Don't hesitate to ask. And if you have time to answer, I'll answer all of them. But even if not, I will just tackle some of the ones that seems important. But I will personally answer all your questions. Okay, so please feel free to ask, okay?
Right. Yeah, I think, as I said, you're going to embellish upon much of what I said anyway. So, I mean, I can imagine there won't be so many questions at this stage. So if they have questions later on for either of us, then I've just seen.
Oh, here is an interesting question. Jonas is asking, what would happen if you stopped performing spirituality? Well, I'm going to address that in my presentation, Jonas. So let me get started soon on that. And there is also another question from Nathan.
Nathan.
Yeah, and he's asking, Dr. Tuck, you agree that we have a dual nature, spiritual beings having a human experience?
Absolutely. I mean, I strongly believe that um, we are here for an experience, and that experience is primarily a learning experience and a way of us learning to evolve, to become multidimensional, and to go beyond this physical 3D existence. And I think that there are a plethora of reasons why we might have come here, but I'm certain that we actually agreed with ourselves what mission, what purpose we were going to perform on Earth, if nothing else, to learn and to grow and to, in the bigger picture, ultimately embrace unconditional love and humility and something which is even more powerful, which is authenticity.
Yeah. Well, when you ask, spiritual beings having a human experience, um, that is not actually a dual nature. That is one nature. But unfortunately, that is not how we live in the in especially in the Western society. Um, we don't live that way. We are not spiritual beings having human experience. We, in fact, having, you know, human beings having human experience. It's something that needs to be transcended, but we will go into it more as I go into my part of the presentation. Okay. Thank you, Nathan. Thanks for the question. All right. Um, so,
So I'm going to introduce you now, Anthony, and
okay.
what I'm going to do. Are you ready for me to do that?
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah. Okay. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to read a testimonial for Anthony from one of his clients, which I think sums it up very, very well indeed. So Anthony's client recently said, Anthony is a rare thinker and guide, someone who effortlessly bridges ancient wisdom with modern leadership. His work invites us to reimagine not just how we lead, but why we lead. As a spiritual mystic and executive coach, he has a unique ability to help others access their own inner intelligence, what he so eloquently calls wisdom. His perspective on conscious systems and self-aware innovation isn't just theoretical, it's transformative. Through his writing, seminars, and coaching, Anthony challenges conventional thinking and opens doors to deeper creativity, leadership, and purpose. His client goes on to finish, what I admire most is that his approach is inclusive and deeply human. He doesn't ask you to follow a particular belief system, only to listen more closely to yourself. Anyone looking to lead with clarity, intention, and heart would benefit greatly from working with Anthony. And I think that really sums up Anthony in almost a nutshell. From my own perspective, Anthony is a mystic, and his natural state is that of observing and listening, and speaking in a very generic and mystical way, which is done deliberately to encourage people to think for themselves. So if you want to get the best from Anthony, then please do ask him questions. And what he'll do is he'll connect with your consciousness and provide you the answers that you need at the time. Please welcome Anthony Nayagan.
Thank you. Okay, before I get started, I will try to make the recordings available to you. And this PowerPoint presentation, you will also get a copy of it. So without further ado, let me get started. All right. Take a good look at this child's face, the expression on his face. Doesn't it look like he's asking us, who is the adult here? Well, what I'm going to talk about is something that really does not require super intelligence, but it only requires the curiosity of a child. Curiosity and openness of a child. With that, let's get started. Okay, from the get-go, and from what John has brought it up, let's talk about religion and spirituality. See, because in developing conscious systems, spirituality plays a critical role, whereas religion is not, but spirituality does. So what is the difference between the two? Okay, now, religion is pretty much an institution, and as institution, it has, the fundamentally it's an order of governance. And how do they govern? With their doctrines and traditions and socializations and belief systems and all sorts of things, dogmas, and how they manage people at a very personal level, by way of fear and separation and all of that. See, you're going to see that in religion. Whereas spirituality transcends all of these. Spirituality is not about an institution. It's about a personal experience. In other words, for someone who is spiritual, God is not a theory. God is not a doctrine. God is an experience personally realized. It is not a system. It is not an order, what we believe. It's transcending all the systems and all the orders. It is not about binding us to dogmas and doctrines and all of that. It's everything about inner freedom. Inner freedom to express ourselves, inner freedom to be creative, inner freedom to be innovative. Freedom has a lot to do with the likeness of God that we are. Think about the freedom of Christ, how free he was. Nobody was able to control him. Spirituality, the operating factor is love, not fear. See, fear and love cannot coexist. It is a philosophical contradiction. It not only it cannot coexist, actually one dispels the other. See, to say that fear God and love God, it's not right. So spirituality is about loving and the freedom to love and the freedom to express love. That's really what spirituality is. See, when you have a religion, obviously religion creates separation. We have seen that all around us. We have so many religious separations all across the world. But spirituality sees truth in all of their teachings. It transcends the religious separations. I see truth in the scriptures of all religions. See, spirituality unifies us. It does not separate us. Okay? Now, here is an important thing that we need to understand anthropos. Anthropos literally means fullness of being, fullness in every aspect of our being. That's really what anthropos is. Anthropos represents a higher self of our being. Anthropos represents spiritual awakening. Anthropos also represents liberation, total liberation from every attachment, every bindings, every sufferings, every sickness. It really doesn't matter. When we are spiritually advancing, we are liberating ourselves from all these bindings. And anthropos also means an integration of our divine nature as well as human nature. And anthropos also means it's a call to realize our higher consciousness. Let me take this opportunity to tell you something which is very, very important. Every founder of this religion, of the world religions, every founder, whether it is Jesus, whether it is Buddha, whether it is Krishna, whether it's Muhammad, or everyone, they came to this world as avatars or even gods or even prophets, but they took the form of a human being only to do one thing. And that one thing is liberate us from our bindings, liberate us from our ignorance, liberate us from our struggles, liberate us from our sufferings. But the caretakers of those religions took these philosophies and made it into a structure of more institutional control. So we live our lives not as liberated as the founders of these religions intended. That's a major difference between spirituality and religion. With that in mind, let's move on. With Dr. Tuck, John talked a lot about external intelligence. Now, when I say external intelligence, we are going to talk about a lot about the Newtonian, orders and external intelligence and all of that. You see, mind you, it is something that is necessary because we live, in other words, our outputs are more or less an external outputs. So it is not a requirement whether external intelligence is bad or internal intelligence is better. Well, that's not the purpose of this comparison. Okay, the reason external intelligence is important because we need to apply the internal intelligence in the form of an external intelligence. Otherwise, external intelligence is not possible. External intelligence allows us to create 3D systems, yes. Internal intelligence allows us to create multidimensional systems. See, with the existence of the external systems that we have now, when we create conscious systems, we can add other dimensions one at a time. So with that in perspective, let's understand what an external intelligence is. See, external intelligence is what we learn in the outside world, what we learn in the universities, what we learn from our workplace, what we learn from knowledge acquired from sources that are physical and tangible, and that could be experienced also. But that's what external intelligence is. See, it expands the human understanding, in terms of application, in terms of collaboration. And it facilitates innovation. Okay. And when I talk about innovation, let me address something that is very, very critical here. Or should I take it? No, I will say it right now. See, Innovation is something when a definition or, when an order evolves into a robust order. You see, so in other words, innovation originates at a point where our source intelligence has almost evolved into a matter. And that from that source intelligence, we keep on engineering better products, better services, better systems, better everything. That's what innovation is. It begins with the source intelligence that is tangible, that is observable, that is all of that. Okay, in other words, it begins with the matter, it begins with the definition, begins with the theory, it begins with an idea that is concrete, and you're taking it from there. As we move forward, I will tell you what creation is. But right now, you know, what it does, external intelligence, it enables us to connect individuals, connect teams, and enables collective intelligence in terms of innovation, in terms of experiments, in terms of everything. That is possible with external intelligence. Internal intelligence, it's not. Okay? And it definitely shapes decision making when it comes to the application of it. And that's one of the reasons why a lot of our enterprises, a lot of our endeavors, they thrive on external intelligence when it comes to the application of it. Okay? And by the same token, before I go any further into internal intelligence, let me introduce you what is consciousness. See, when we are going to develop conscious systems, we know what consciousness is. We have to. See, when I talk about consciousness, I'm not talking about our psychological consciousness of our mind. I'm not. I'm talking about consciousness as a quantum field. See, every particle in the universe, whether it's particles that we see or particles that we don't see, in other words, particles that manifest and unmanifest, is encapsulated with quantum field. It is not the matter that converges and creates other matters by itself, as suggested by Newtonian physics. It's the quantum field that enables matters to connect with each other. So the creative part is actually is a function of the quantum field, not matter itself. And this is the fundamental awareness that interacts and influences reality at subatomic and even at atomic levels. It cannot escape it. That's what it is. It is not the byproduct of our brain. Although it is conscious, it is intelligent. This quantum field is not static. It is an energy that is conscious as well. This is what I'm talking about when it comes to consciousness. Now, mind you something. I'm just going to allude you to another thing. See, we, as a body, we have about 70 trillion cells. Each cell is a cluster of any number of particles, n number of particles. And each of these particles are encapsulated with quantum consciousness, quantum field. See, this collective consciousness within ourselves is really what I describe as human consciousness, not what our brain produces. It is that awareness that we as a conscious energy, that is what we are. We have consciousness within ourselves. We have consciousness without ourselves. That's what makes human consciousness. Then from then on, there is universal consciousness all the way to supreme consciousness. We have all of that. Okay, but to begin with, this is the consciousness that we are talking about. So, this consciousness is a universal force, but it is also an interconnected energy. It's connected within us, it's connected without us, it is connected all the way, to the supreme consciousness. It is connected, it is interconnected. You're talking about observer effect, and reality creation. See, in quantum mechanics, the act of observation influences the outcome. So it kind of controls the intent and the outcome. The observation allows us to do that. Now, the observation happens to be not a conscious activity of our consciousness. That observer effect and intent is the conscious activity of our mind as consciousness. In other words, we have an incredibly powerful mind. Okay, let's move on. I will go into it more. Now, non-locality and collective consciousness. See, we talked about that, but let me talk about non-locality. See, what does it mean? See, in quantum mechanics, we are beyond the locality, whereas in Newtonian order, we and the order is very much a part of. Non-locality non-locality refers to something that is truly incredible. When it comes to relating it as quantum entanglement, we can connect. I mean, I'll give you one example. You see, there is, if you could communicate to a body of water with emotions, with love, and with compassion, guess what? Another body of water, thousands of miles away from us, will show its effect. And this non-locality is proven by Mazuro Emoto, and he has written books about it. That is how non-locality transforms water. It's been proven. See, so the nature of thought, in other words, our psychological consciousness, it plays a major role in quantum consciousness. But how do we do that? How do we use that is the question that we need to ask. Okay, hold on to that question. Then we go into spiritual awakening through quantum awareness. You see, when it comes to quantum awareness, we need to come to terms with one concept, that we are no longer limited beings. We are no longer constrained to our knowledge and our perceptive intelligence. We are liberated, totally liberated by every founder of major religions. Totally liberated to realize this quantum awareness. So the potential, we as quantum people, people with quantum consciousness, is not limited in any way whatsoever. Spirituality, this is what the spirituality is going to lead you into. I will go into it more in detail. So, what is internal intelligence? See, internal intelligence, in a nutshell, it's the same as wisdom. Christianity talks about the wisdom of the Holy Spirit, but it is the intelligence that is embedded within us that is incredibly powerful. Okay, if I were to give you one specific example, see, we learned our first language by the time we were 2 years old. Even when our mouths and our muscles were not formed enough that we could speak, we knew the language. See, with external intelligence, we learned grammar, we learned alphabets, we learned sentence structure, we learned all sorts of things. Let me ask you a question. How long it takes for you to learn a second language? Something you did within 2 years old. See, that is the difference between internal intelligence and external intelligence, essentially. But internal intelligence is a lot more than that. It is the source of the higher self, insightfulness, divine insight, all of that. That is the source of it. But the only thing that it is not, you see, divine intelligence or internal intelligence is not as ordered as the Newtonian external intelligence. It's not. Okay, it is. There is nothing ordered inside of us. It is not made in space and time order. Nothing. Everything is a possibility. Everything is a continuously forever ending, transcending potential, and everything is incredible. That's really what internal intelligence is. So let me take you even a little further. Okay. Now, this internal intelligence is the source of insightful wisdom. See, what we have right now, see, our mind is the one that is controlling our decisions, not our insights. Many times it's our ego and our fears are controlling the decision making process. We are very aware of what could go wrong. We don't look at what is the ultimate potential of it. What is the everlasting potential? We don't see it that way. We look at, okay, what is technically possible or not possible. We look at, what could go wrong with it. What do we have to make it work? To make it work, we think of everything that we can go wrong, so we can plant in exception management systems throughout when we create external systems. But when we have our internal intelligence control our ego and our external intelligence, what we can do as human beings is something remarkable. This is where spirituality is going to help you. Okay? And it unfolds through self reflection, it empowers creativity, and it connects you to a higher consciousness. Let me address number 4 and 5 now. It empowers creativity. So, what is creativity? See, creativity in every religion, when you look at it more in a sort of a mystical purpose or mystical intention of what they are saying, you will come across this truth. And the truth is, creativity begins at the source where there is nothing is manifesting. In other words, an unmanifest evolving as a manifestable reality, that is creation. So creation and innovation are two different things. You see, so even in Christianity, if you were to kind of think about it, you see, creation started when everything was a primordial void. In other words, nothing. a primordial nothingness. From that is where everything got started. When you take it all the way to Vedanta, it is very specific. It says creativity is an unmanifest evolving as a manifested reality. That is what creation is. So it is no longer a question of whether the chicken came first or the egg came first. It all started from an unmanifest. That is what spirituality says. Guess what? Science is not any different. Science says the same thing. Now, let's talk about the connection to higher consciousness. See, the connection to higher consciousness is something that is very, very important. Okay? There is higher consciousness within us, divine consciousness. So, in other words, the human consciousness has the potential of evolving into divine consciousness within our being itself. That is one transcendental opportunity. The second transcendental opportunity is even much more vibrant. And that is, see, we are created in the image and likeness of God, which means in quantum language, okay, we are separated particles from the creator to the created. So, in other words, our soul as image and likeness of God is a separated particle that is still entangled. Look, this is not a far-fetched idea. Jesus said to Philip, when Philip asked him, "We want to see our Father, show us our Father." And to that, you know what Jesus said? "Philip, don't you see me? I see what my Father is doing, and that's what I do. If you have seen me, you have seen my Father." That is the scope of quantum entanglement in spirituality. All right. External systems, we know what they are. They are Newtonian orders, man-made systems. It comes in a variety of ways from our products, from our operating systems, from our businesses, from our policies, from our services. Everything is an external system. Okay, let's take it further. So let's give some examples. See, it's governed by cause and effect. Of course, they are. It's a physical system, three-dimensional system, and it is still operating on a cause and effect Newtonian order. It is constrained to 3 dimensions. They are scalable, and they can be made efficient. And also, you can add more dimensions to it. See, it lacks self-evolution. See, when you have a conscious system, that it always self-evolves. Okay. External systems pretty much work on an input-output mechanics. Whereas internal systems, in other words, conscious systems, they are consuming systems. They consume data. You don't feed data to a conscious system. It's a huge difference. Okay, external systems, they are structured, man-made logic. Internal systems are the opposite. Okay, it is always transcending, it's always evolving. And it always allows itself to creativity and deeper perceptions. It's what you can create with quantum intelligence and with conscious systems is, is unbelievable. In fact, this is the next frontier of humanity. See, unlike external systems, internal intelligence is something incredible. And the purpose of internal systems, it always not, I wouldn't use the word emerging, it's always wanting to transcend. See, this is what um, John referred to earlier. I mean, he showed you all those planes, and at the top of the plane was spiritual plane. See, when you are in the spiritual plane, you are always transcending. Okay, you are not restricting to um, rigid concepts. In your inner freedom and in your ever-growing wisdom, you always desire transcension. We have the intellectual potential, to reach to our divine consciousness, to the universal consciousness, and go into the supreme consciousness all the way to it. We have that intellectual potential, and that requires transcension. See, this is the difference between an internal intelligence system and an external intelligence system. So here it is. See, the difference here, what I want to point to one thing, you are going to receive these PowerPoints anyway, so let me just talk about it. The difference, the main difference here, you see, when you have an external system is subject to an exit strategy, mainly because anything that is an external system is perishable. The scripture says the same thing. Anything that is made of matter, in other words, anything that is made of something perishable will eventually perish. See, that is the reason why we are fully aware of the exit potential of everything we do. Whereas what we do with internal intelligence, since it originated from something imperishable, something unmanifest, it will stand the test of time. That is the big difference. Okay. Now, how do we, become creators of conscious systems? It begins with observing the natural systems out in the world. Watch a plant, a tree, observe it, and observe both of, in other words, observe the tree as a matter and go beyond and observe it as an energy of anything, everything that is unmanifest about the tree. Just observe it. You can. See, that's the power of human mind. Well matured human mind can observe both. And from that, you can learn everything that goes on, within the tree. For instance, see, no matter how much you want to pour water on the tree only consumes what it needs. You cannot feed a tree. Tree consumes what it needs. Whereas our systems in operation in the with our external intelligent order, it doesn't. It requires input-output. Okay? So here is the natural systems. I'm giving you the breakdown, and you will get a copy of it. See, the big difference we need to see, you see, when you are looking at Newtonian physics, you are literally looking at dealing with things. In other words, dealing with objects, dealing with ideas, dealing, all of that that has limited potential. Whereas when you are looking at developing conscious systems, everything is the opposite. Everything is a probability, everything is interconnected, everything is fluid, everything is immensely potential. That's the big difference. So observe these things. When you're looking at a tree, for instance, observe these things. When you're looking at the galaxy, again, observe these things. Okay? And see how a tree, see, even when you're looking at a tree is not without an order. The more you observe the tree, both as an energy and as a particle, you're going to see an order emerging out of that. See, and that order can be replicated with external intelligence. Okay, so don't be afraid to say, oh, we cannot do that, because we have all the limitations. Not at all. The human mind has the power to observe something, bring it down to a matter, bring it down to an intent, then put it back together on an engineering format. We can. That's innovation. See, so everything is a possibility when we are dealing with quantum consciousness. So quantum consciousness, and it is fundamental to reality. Okay, it is influenced by quantum phenomena such as entanglement, superposition, wave function collapse, and all of that. And it suggests that consciousness is not a byproduct of the brain, but an intrinsic aspect of the universe itself, deeply integrated with the natural system and with our own being. Even within us, there are so many interconnected systems that are going on. You see? All right, okay. Let's move on to the next slide. I think I have kind of jumped ahead, but let me try to get back into this. See, there is big difference between conscious systems and natural systems, and there is lot of relativity also between consciousness and natural systems. Okay, so when we are observing natural systems, you see, even systems within ourselves, okay, we are going to find different ways of how we can make certain things conscious. Even with the external systems we are trying to create, we are trying to innovate. We can learn a lot from observing natural systems within us and without us. Okay, I will go into it more. Okay, but the the big difference between the consciousness and natural systems is the reality that is tremendously conscious, uh, exercises incredible freedom, and it just thrives on its own no matter what. Um, and see, these are the things that we need to kind of observe and recreate that reality in. Sorry about that. Can you hear me?
All good. Yep. Got you back.
Okay, I'm sorry about that. I don't know what's going on. Um, okay, all right. So here we are. Let's move on to the next slide. Okay, now we are going into the conscious systems part two. Okay, and we are going to talk about some specific things about how we can do all of these. Okay, that is part two. And please, there is a question from Nathan. Mystical schools of thought in all major dogmatic religions, Gnosticism in Christianity, Kabbalah in Judaism, and Sufism were all far ahead of their time with intuitive knowledge of the true nature of the universe being confirmed by quantum mechanics now. I cannot agree with you more. See, but yeah, you're right, but see, the point is, we as seculars, in other words, we are not religious beings, we are not, let's not consider ourselves as mystics, but we as regular people, who have endeavors, um, external endeavors, who have families to take care of, who have relationships, and who have businesses, who have all of that. You see, how do we apply these kind of insights and create things that are going to outlive our own beings, our own lives itself? How do we do that? You see, that is what conscious systems is. Of course, the religions did not teach us, they held it to themselves. I agree. Okay, all the Sufis and all of those people that Nathan is talking about, they knew that. But it was not brought to the public. It was not brought to the masses. It was not brought. The word I use is seculars. Seculars are you and me. Seculars can be mystics also. But, we are not open to these kinds of intelligence or dogmas or anything. We are not. Okay. That is one of the letdowns we suffered in the last thousands of years. Okay. Anyway, but we as seculars, we have our own way of spirituality, and that spirituality is very relevant, very important. That is what I'm going to talk about in my next few slides. Okay. So, the role of spirituality in developing conscious systems. See, conscious systems actually bridge science and spirituality. All right. Human intelligence is evolving beyond the material understanding. As Nathan gave the introduction already, he is one of the viewers, Nathan Hoffman. And, let me kind of give you some specific examples. See, we had mistakes. Even when we go back to the year 100, the first century after Jesus and the second century, we had mystics. One is Damien and the other one is Cosmos. And they were innovating pharmaceuticals, and they were conducting surgeries on humans 2000 years ago. And that is by way of their, spiritual powers, mystical powers obtained by way of spirituality and conscious awareness. Not just that. See, when we are talking about traditional medicines across the eastern part of the world, they are, they all started, they have a lineage that dates back to 5,000 years or longer. and they still continue to practice those traditions. They all originated from spirituality and conscious awareness. Not just that, their music is like that, their dance is like that. So many things that they do is still there. Even to say something that is very specific, the way they process silk in India has spiritual roots. Okay, many of these things, they all have spiritual roots. See, but the difference is, since Nathan brought it up, I'm kind of jumping ahead. The difference is this. Um, you see, even in Eastern spirituality, the seculars and the spirituals, they were separate. The spirituality, it kind of evolved as a tradition that moved away from external intelligence to internal intelligence. Whereas the people with external intelligence, they practiced, all the human endeavors that applied spirituality. And they used to go to these spiritual people, get their guidance, get their advice, and get all of those things and come back and apply in their external intelligence. Is what traditionally people have been doing in India and in the Far East. That's what they have been doing. And it's not any different in the West either. We also put our mystics and everybody on a pedestal, kept them separate from us. And we go to them for prayers and we go to them for healings. That's what we have been doing. But the spirituality that I am suggesting and I am, my followers and everyone practice is not that. We live a full, complete, secular life as spiritual beings. And we get involved in developing conscious systems and all of that. So it is the fullness of life as all of our spiritual and religious leaders, the founders who started all these religions envisioned. And that's what we try to do. So, in other words, it's a spirituality for secular people, not for the religious alone. Okay, that's what we are trying to do. And of course, I have jumped ahead here. And so I'm going to kind of quickly go through the rest of the slides, if I could help it. Okay, so here is the contradiction between the material understanding, okay, and the quantum understanding. Conscious systems emerge from understanding these differences and the limitations. Mind you something, in spirituality, see, transcension is not possible unless you master. In other words, transcendence is associated with mastery. So we need to master the external intelligence in order to transcend into the internal intelligence. Okay. By the same token, I'm going to tell you another thing, that it is not a milestone that happens at the end of it. You see, as we begin the journey of this mastery and transcension, invariably it kind of runs parallel. And then we reach the final milestone. So, in other words, it's not something that is a result of the end of a milestone. It is not. See, mind you, God is so merciful, He is so loving, and He is so benevolent, and He wants to have the experience with us as we desire to have that experience with Him. So never think that you are alone in this journey. He wants to give you that experience of transcension, of realizations, of all of that, and coming into this conscious awareness. You know why? Because you, as an image and likeness of God, He cannot wait to become a co-creative partner with you. The kingdom, as Jesus envisioned on earth, depends on that quantum entanglement. When we come to realize that we are entangled with God, and we experience what Jesus experienced. I see what my Father is doing, and that's what I do. And thus we become creative partners with Him. So it's although it is it's the final stage of what we are as spiritual masters. See, it is something that can grow together. In other words, you are not going to be without experience. You will have experience as you begin your journey. That's really what the remarkable opportunity is. So it's no longer relevant that we need to be limited, ignorant, humble beings on earth, as every religion says. It's not. We are children of God. We are empowered. We are His image and likeness. So we have everything that takes to become a quantum conscious beings and create systems that could last forever. And we have created systems like that. So don't underestimate our potential. We have created art, we have created music, that could never fade away. We have done that. See, now we are going to create systems that would outlive even our own existential being on earth. All right. In this context, I'm going to introduce you to another phenomenon called witnessing and observing. Okay. For someone who witnesses, truth is always evolving. Whereas someone who is observing, now observation happens to be something with an external intelligence. So an observer is looking for static truth, whereas someone who witnessed truth is always evolving, always moving. So witnessing actually is a passive conscious experience. And the observation, on the other hand, it engages the mind in defining reality, defining truth. Okay, so we are looking for molecules we can put an order in an external intelligent case, for instance. So witnessing perceives pure potential, observation materializes it. And this potential is always moving. And the materialized observation is static. See, science and spirituality must integrate both these perspectives, meaning witnessing and observing. You see, this is the challenge of a secular spiritual person. We need to integrate both perspectives of witnessing and observing. So the creation begins with witnessing. This is where we witness something that is still unmanifest. Innovations, it follows through observation. That is the difference we are going to make. So the conscious system and the man-made systems, now it becomes very obvious. See, in the natural systems, even our own beings, you see, we have so many systems within us. We have digestive systems, we have reproductive systems, we have central nervous systems, we have all sorts of systems even within us. Okay? Observe those things and see how they operate and see if we can replicate in the systems we create. Only thing that we need to bear in mind, conscious systems consume energy organically. So no matter how even our medical processes intervene, it can only heal a symptom. It can only heal some matter that is damaged. But the conscious part of the matter is not healed. And that is why, although they take care of our symptoms, we continue to remain sick. So, in other words, intervention is one way of input output. On the other hand, if we do spirituality to perfect the conscious energy that embodies the affected particle, then we can self heal ourselves. Okay? Let's keep going. See, these are some of the conscious systems in nature. See, conscious systems originate from eternal energy. And if you really read the scriptures, not the teachings, not the interpreted versions of the scriptures, you will notice that the scriptures align with the quantum reality. Matter is temporary, whereas energy is imperishable. So we as, conscious energy, we are imperishable. Although the matter is going to perish, our body is going to perish, but we as conscious energy, we are not going to. That is what Jesus promised us. And that's also what science tells us. See, our creations should follow the same theory, same scientific theory of conscious creation, not creation of matter. Even when we're creating matter, we need to be aware that matter should be encapsulated with consciousness. See, innovation must move towards sustainability and consciousness. Okay, now we are coming to the critical area. How this is going to make a difference in our lives. AI is going to play a major role in creating conscious systems. See, when I talk about AI, AI it's only coming into the spotlight only now. Okay, in the last maybe an year or two, we are hearing more and more about AI. But I learned AI in 1987. Even at that time, AI was a very applicable technology solution. So when we are looking at AI, please don't think that AI is just invented, everything is untested. I don't know how it is going to affect us, that and this. No, it is a well-tested technology, well-established technology. It is just emerging now after so many years. That's all it is. See, there is a lot of understanding, lack of understanding in the potential of AI. But see, AI can evolve beyond the rigid programming. See, when we are talking about rigid programming, programming is simply a Newtonian order of a binary logic. That's what it is. See, can it go beyond that? It should go beyond that. But here is the good news. See, if anything that our external intelligence can observe and discern in an empirical order of Newtonian logic of causation and binary logic, it can be reproduced by AI. It can be anything. And don't think we as human beings cannot do that. I mean, come on. Incredible phenomena. We have broken down them, fragmented them, put them back in an order, and created some empirical sense out of it. Take, for instance, love. And look at the the way we have partitioned and fragmented love and put that in a kind of a theoretical empirical orders. Could that be programmed? Yes. Could that be made into emotional systems, emotionally responsive systems? Yes. We can do all of that. And it can be added as another layer of dimension, another plane. It can be. There is a lot of leadership initiatives in AI education as well, educating especially to the public. But if you are going to have people who are inflicting fear, AI is going to do that, AI is going to do this, and AI is going to ruin the society, yeah, then that fear is going to jeopardize everything. You see, that is the reason why I talked earlier about fear. See, fear infringes on our freedom, even in our freedom to think and imagine what is possible. Fear dispels that. So don't be afraid. AI must transition to data conceiving models instead of input output systems. AI must mirror natural intelligence. And there is a potential for self evolving conscious systems. AI can integrate observation and witnessing into development. See, there are conscious AI systems still maybe at an I refuse to admit they are at a stage of infancy. They may be at a stage where we still need to populate data into it. You see, in other words, we need to allow them to consume data. So as far as the critical mass of data, they may not have it. So the applicability of such conscious systems may not be as matured as we would want it to be, but those systems are evolving. And I know such companies, and I am very willing to give you referrals to those companies, when we have a relationship going. Okay? Um, and and mind you, see, John wants me to talk about what unconditional love, joy, and gratitude, forgiveness, and authenticity into the mix. Absolutely, John. That is what
I
spirituality.
was just having a conversation with Nathan.
Oh, okay. Oh, all right. Okay. Oh, there you are. Oh, okay. Sorry.
Nathan's a very wise person.
Yeah,
I'm really liking him.
he has written an incredible book. It's called Faith Physics. I'm reading
I've
this
been
book.
looking at it online, and I'm really
Yeah, I
excited.
told you
I'm
about that.
definitely going to buy
Yes.
it.
Yeah, and it is a book, a new theory of everything. Wonderful
Yes,
book.
yeah.
I'm reading it now. Um, okay, so that's what Nathan is for, and I'm sorry I didn't mention that earlier. All right. So what we are developing, we need to go into that holistic part of AI in terms of AI as something that has an input output system as well as a data consuming system that is self evolving. That happens to be the next frontier of AI. And we have a few people who is in the industry attending this seminar. And this is what I put forward as a challenge to you. So, as we got started, Jonas, the role of spirituality in conscious systems, absolutely. Spirituality is the missing dimension. Founders of religions, they sought to free humanity from their limitations, but the characters took us on the another direction. Enlightenment leads us to wisdom and creation. The kingdom of heaven, as Jesus envisioned, is an earthly reality. That's what he told us to pray, thy kingdom come on earth as it is in heaven. So the necessity for a secular engagement in spiritual wisdom is imperative, and it is right now. And self-knowledge as the foundation of conscious creation, as I said, see, we always need to seek knowledge, beginning with knowledge about ourselves. See, it's only mastery allows us to transcend. Unless we master the external systems we are dealing with, we cannot go. In other words, our journey into the internal intelligence is going to be affected by a lot of impediments along the way, a lot of obstacles along the way. So the self-knowledge and the mastery of the external intelligence that we are, it's critical to transcend into the internal intelligence. But we can do this, in other words, it's a journey, and that journey goes parallel. It's not, it doesn't move on a Newtonian order. Okay, you just reach that point and that causes the other. No, it is not like that. You just start the journey and the other will evolve. That's how spirituality works. See, the unique power of human beings, we have to really think beyond the idea of we as limited beings, we are imperfect, we are only human, and that is our humility. Absolute nonsense. God created us in his image and likeness. He called us his children. He gave us authority and empowerment. He gave us the wisdom. And he gave us the wherewithal to realize the absolute human potential of who we are and evolve into the perfect beings that he intended us to be like. See, he created us, and the only creation he complimented himself, saying that he has done something very good. How could we be so limited? And we call our limitations humility? Nonsense. We are not. Always believe that we are created in his image and likeness. We are his children. We are empowered. We are empowered even to the extent of creating quantum realities, just by way of using our mind to observe. And the mindful intent and observation, it can even create and shape realities as we move forward in quantum consciousness. See, the potential we have is even higher than celestial beings. Mind you something. You see, Krishna and Muhammad and Jesus and Buddha and all of them, if they could do it, they could have just done everything that they intended to do from a celestial kingdom. But they chose to become humans in order to do what they had to do. The reason why is it is something only humans can do, not celestial beings. So the potential of humanity is something even celestial beings don't have. So don't limit ourselves to our weaknesses. Don't limit ourselves to our handicaps, to what we can and cannot do. We have the authority and empowerment and the power to do all sorts of things even change the quantum reality. And we are destined, we are created to become co-creators of a divine order. Living life aligned with spirituality and scientific truth is the next frontier. See, Einstein talked about religion without science and science without religion. Let me tell you something. Science does not create anything. It only invents things that have already been created. So there is no reason for religion to be so alienated to science or even kind of push themselves away from science. It's not, no reason for it. It's absolute ignorance, if you ask me. And I don't have any better way of saying that. Okay? So humanity, right now, it operates at a fraction of its own potential. Fear and ignorance still restrict our being, although every founders of religions came to liberate us from all of that, it still governs our being. Spirituality unlocks this chakra. The urgency for enlightenment of our being and even technological innovation, it is right here, right now. We need to move from limited existence to divine co-creation. Now, I'm going to talk about meditation here. Meditation prayer, and contemplation are the three keys to explore internal intelligence, to even begin the journey. See, contemplation requires external intelligence. Prayer is external intelligence. Meditation, on the other hand, it's a journey into the internal intelligence. So when we are journeying into the internal intelligence, the requirement is mind and our body. In other words, our existential awareness that as we as physical being must be seized, must be transcended. And we need to observe ourselves as conscious energy, the being of energy. That is what this meditation is. So when you talk about transcendental meditation, it is not a matter of manipulating, mantras and that, this, and all of that. It is actually a way of reaching that sleep state while we are wide awake. In other words, it's akin to a dream state. In a dream state, our mind and body is at sleep, but our consciousness is awake. At that stage, we can observe, we can see, we can dream. But the minute we observe our dream, that is when our mind is waking up, then our dream is gone. So it is a kind of an art that we have to develop that is going to help us stay awake seconds at a time. In other words, stay consciously awake seconds at a time as our mind and body are asleep. In the beginning, you are going to feel, your body is going to interpret that you are about to sleep, and you will fall asleep, no question about it. So have some pillows around, okay, and don't feel bashful about it. Okay, if you want to fall asleep, fall asleep. But try to stay awake seconds at a time. And these seconds will evolve into minutes, into hours, and even 24 hours a day. Okay. So just get started. All right. You need to align technology with principles, spiritual principles, and spiritual principle is what? Spiritual principle is governed by what Jonathan said earlier. Spiritual principles are love, unconditional love, peace, compassion, mercy, empathy. See, these are spiritual principles. See, the more and more we become spiritually evolved, yeah, our consciousness and our wisdom and all of that is going to, increase in another proportion. But at the same time, we are also becoming, you know, transformed as people of love, people of, incredible love, incredible empathy, and incredible compassion. So those are some of the things. So can we align technology with that? Yeah, because understand one thing. If our AI systems can be emotionally responsive to the people who are interacting with it, can you imagine the potential of it? And this is not, I'm not hinting at something at a potential. Yes, I'm hinting, but at the same time, there are AI systems already in development with this quantum idea in mind, with this technology in mind, already in development. And I would be happy to give you referrals. Okay? All right. For leaders, innovators, for everybody, commit to these things. See, I wouldn't say commit to these things. I started with a photo of a child. A child doesn't make commitments. Child is curious. Child is curious. Child is open. So be curious and open about spiritual and self-awareness. Study both science and spiritual truths. You will find there is so much in parallels between the two. It's not one is opposed to the other. See, develop AI systems with consciousness in mind and educate others with potential conscious systems. The public needs a lot of education in that regard. And take responsibility for the next frontier. See, AI already evolving beyond programming. The world is going to be guided by intelligence and compassion. And it is going to replace obsolete mechanistic systems. You see, I'm not, the replacing is a bad word here. And even making something obsolete is a bad word here. All we need to do is, these are three-dimensional systems. Add more and more dimensions to our existing systems. That is what we need to do. Can we transform our existing systems this way? Yes, absolutely we can. Okay? And what will happen if you do all of these? We are looking at the emergence of a truly enlightened global civilization. It's a time to act now. Some of the closing thoughts. The greatest breakthroughs frontier is still ahead of us. The fusion of science and spirituality is inevitable. Conscious systems will replace our world. We have a new role, a role to play in this transformation. Let's evolve. Here is our phone number. Here is our information, and you will get a copy of these. Um, this this transcript. I will send it to you, and I will also try to see if I can make this video available to you. Okay, that since this is our first seminar, I haven't done that yet, but I kind of programmed it in a way. Whether it's going to be produced videos for us to share, I don't know that yet. Okay, since this is my first time, forgive me. All right, so we are open for questions. You can ask questions both to Jonathan and me. Okay, we have a few minutes. We have about 15 minutes left to do this. Okay.
So I mean, out of the gate, I'd really like to have an offline conversation with Nathan if he's up for it. I'd be really fascinated to have a chat with him.
Okay. Yeah, he has been asking a lot of questions.
Yeah, very, very, very intelligent and interesting questions.
Yeah, me too. I'm looking forward to that. Any other questions?
Oh, by the way, Anthony, my email address is spelt wrong. It's koala,
is it?
Koala is spelt with a K, not a C.
Oh, okay. Let me just correct that right now. When I'm copying it, I will send you the correct information when I'm sending you the PDF. Okay. Yeah. Feel free to ask questions. You can still ask questions. Okay. All right. So since we have no questions, I'm going to at least end the recording. Okay. All right. No, I'm only ending the.
Yeah, thanks very much for listening, and we hope you enjoyed that.
Yeah.